All right. Thank you very much for introduction. Let's get started. We're very excited to be here on this great event. It's pretty impressive, so many tracks and so many different sessions, and we're going to start up with a quick introduction about ourselves. My name is Antje Lamartine. I'm a Senior Customer Success Manager of Blueprint in beautiful Munich. As I said earlier, the sun is no longer shining today. And I've been working on the Microsoft platform since about SharePoint 2010, so it makes 2010, 2011. And over the years, I've moved into adoption and change management from Microsoft 365.
And my name is Thomy Gölles. I'm sitting like 400 kilometers across the Alps in Graz in Austria. I work for a company called Solvion, and I'm responsible there with my team for everything around the basically technical part of the modern workplace. So this means SharePoint, Teams, Office 365, and also our AI part. If you want to reach out to us, there are our contacts. We're pretty active on LinkedIn and on Twitter. Please feel free to reach out, ask questions. If there is something, if you're watching this on a YouTube recording or later on today, no worries, we are available. Okay. With that, let's start with the image of 2020 so far, and what we hoped for in the beginning of the year, or let's say early April. I think, Antje, we met last time in person in the end of February, I think was the date. End of February means 2 weeks before the world changed, so we had no idea what was going on, and yeah, that's sums up, I think, the situation pretty well, and somehow our own path of the year changed as well, didn't it?
It changed absolutely, because when we got together at the end of February, we said, yeah, we want to talk about a few topics. And the first topic that we actually had in mind was return on investment, Microsoft 365. And then we very quickly realized how much we were affected by the changes of homeschooling. I have 2 children in school. They're 14 and 17, and Thomy has teachers in the family. So we noticed, okay, so the world has changed, and I guess with us, our topic has to change as well. So we still embarked on that podcast we wanted to do, and started off with, on the left side, the adoption technique. We uploaded a few things on YouTube, and the very first 6 sessions actually were on Teams for Education, because we asked ourselves, could we actually apply the methods that we're using for our business clients on a daily basis? Could we actually apply those to schools? So I think it was a really interesting journey, right, Thomy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we started with, as you said, return of investment of social intranets, I think, was our first idea. Then the pandemic hit us hard in all areas. And the one thing is that we changed our focus, but we also saw that the community changed its focus as well. And just to give you a rough numbers, those are 2 Facebook groups. We are one hand side, Antje is active managing, the German one, and the other one is the global one. But if you see the numbers, there are close to 60,000 people in the public group called Microsoft Teams for Education, where I think every 5 or 10 minutes there's a new question. And Antje created our own version of that for the German-speaking area. Of course, it's a little bit more, or we realized, and that will be a theme through the session, that Microsoft Teams for Education is targeted for US schools, and our schooling systems don't have everything in a similar way. Some structures are different, so we needed to have our own thing also for the German-speaking area. But the numbers as well, I think, with school started here back in the beginning of September, 1st or 2nd week. And I think since then, the numbers doubled basically for our members in the group, right? I think we had 300 in the beginning of September, and now we are close to 700 already.
Yeah, we're almost close to 700. So I know most of you are, well, I don't know, but I don't know if you're German speaking, if you're not, but you know, anybody else please feel free to pass those links on. We will have a summary of all the links in the very last slide. Somebody just asked that here, and we're also going to, we can post some of them right in here, but please pass them on. One of the reasons I created the Facebook group, because I realized that there are a lot of English speaking forums where teachers can ask questions, or anybody affected by this change and having to work with Microsoft Teams in the school. Facebook is just one platform. There are plenty of others out there as well. But we did the session also about a month ago, and we asked a few questions in that team because we wanted to get a feel for how things have changed. And apologies, they're in German, we did not translate them, but we basically asked, does your school have an emergency plan for online learning? That's the first question in the top left. Then we asked the question, do you have enough hardware in order to do virtual teaching? Then the next question we ask is, do the students have enough hardware? And then on the next slide, we actually realized we really thought that the situation is probably still pretty dire, and we were actually quite surprised when we asked, how do you rate the planning of your school for the new school year, that you see in the German system 1 is very good and 6 is the worst. So yeah, I mean, some of them still said this is really not that perfect, but at the same time, what we don't reflect here is that they also put a lot of comments in there, and we did actually walk away with a feeling that there's probably more that has been done, but there's still a lot of struggle going on.
Yeah, we expected something else, or at least I expected some 6s, something like it's the worst ever, and there is no ultimate negative vote there. A lot of 5, 2, 3. So there was some preparation, because the big question, when you look at the timeline for schools in our area, it was like, okay, no matter how, but we need to reach summer. That was the main goal. Like the belief back in April or in early May, the summer will come and then COVID will be gone, which of course turns out to be different. And then the next thing that we already realized when our schools closed for the summer break, okay, what's exactly happening between a summer break and reopening in September? And we were a little bit afraid that the schools maybe lose some time there and enjoy too much of the summer vacations. But actually the results say something different, so that people are not completely unhappy with what happened. So just to give you a short indication of how people are feeling at the moment. But going back to the original theme of what we want to talk about today in terms of the education in teams and what we can take away with it from the current situation, we should start with how we can use teams to manage the crisis, the ongoing crisis, because it's not over yet. So the first part is like, okay, what options and what helpers or tools or services within Teams for Education are really here, and what areas are affected.
Yeah. And we actually broke them up into challenges, but I also have good news for you. There are also going to be opportunities, so it's not all completely dire. But we really bucketed into 4 different type of challenges around structured technology, reality, and also the mindset. And I was supporting a few local schools in their journey into Microsoft Teams, continue to teach kids while they cannot go to school. And one of the first things I noticed is that school administrators, so by that I mean heads of schools, as well as IT people, as well as teachers, are very much, I just see, Paul, can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly.
I hear you fine, all good.
Okay. Fine. That they're very much used to structure, and this whole COVID-19 crisis really completely threw them off. We also learned that their comfort for a long time has really been with the analog world, with paper, and they know their processes to a T because they're getting repeated on a yearly basis. So this structure actually was really hard to break up and to actually really realize that yeah, you kind of have to move away from that, and you're also not going to be able to really take it one-to-one into the digital work. So structured, this was one of the challenges. We realized, oops, this is really big. And I think I should say there, and if some of you are consultants, you might know that, and maybe everybody understands that anyways. When you look at it from the outside in, you realize this very quickly. But when you are on the inside, you might not even be aware how structured you are and how you now have to open your mind to actually move away from that. So that was the first bucket of challenges. Then came the technology.
Okay. Yeah, for technology, yeah, it also really hit them hard in terms of technology. The basics that we see present in every business that we work with, where Wi-Fi access, internet access, enough hardware, all that we as an IT consultant group take for granted when we start somewhere. That's a little bit different if you think of schools, or at least the schools that we worked with. So a lot of schools have problem with their connections, and it gets even worse. We're talking about a situation where everyone is at home. So your home Wi-Fi, your home network might get used by 2 adults working from home, doing their job, being on whatever platform, video calls all day, and then the kids as well. So you need a lot of IT equipment, and I'm in the privileged position to have, I don't know how many IT gadgets and how many tablets and laptops, and so that's not a problem for us here, but we know for so many people that's a real struggle to have multiple devices. That's one big thing that technology has as a strong challenge. Another one is really the lack of clarity around privacy and security. What we mean by that is that for our area, everything started like, okay, for ages, teachers I know were not allowed to connect on, let's say, WhatsApp or Signal or whatever with their the parents of their kids. For a COVID situation, that changed totally. The first order basically in Austria was like, okay, get in touch with the people. We don't care now how, just get in touch. And nobody really said, okay, it's okay. It was just like, okay, now just do it. And there were a lot of concerns, and actually in Germany, it's still in that week, is Microsoft 65 GDPR ready or not? So there's a big buzz still around that, and a lot of uncertainty here. And that's also comes together with a lack of strategy and training, because let's face it, no teacher was trained to deliver the content remotely before March, before the pandemic hit us all. So this is also everything like improvised, and a lot of motivation needs to come from the teachers themselves to be able to deliver the things. And that's not really an easy thing to do. In terms of reality, as I already told you, we realized pretty early on that, for example, Teams is built for the US structure of schooling. To give you the example, I went 12 years through all different levels of school, and I'm just remembering the last 4 years at what we would call our high school. I stayed, I think, 95% in the very same classroom, so I never moved. That's why for our people here, it was at the beginning very clear. You create a team, and that's the one thing for the class, because everything should happen inside of the team. And if you're from the US, or if you remember just one of those many high school movies, you see a lot of people moving. They're moving from history class to geography class because the teacher has a classroom and the pupils move back and forth. And that's a total different thing that we found reflected also in the way how Teams is structured. So for us, it was like, okay, I want to create one big thing and everything goes in there. And Teams actually forces you to think in a different way, saying, okay, you might create a team for the history class of this year and then move on. So this was like a different way of tackling things. The other hard reality is that teachers are parents and parents are teachers. So for teachers, it's extremely hard if they have own kids at home. So to deliver their content via homeschooling with the task of doing homeschooling for your own kids at the very same time. So that is also something we always need to keep in mind if we judge something or if we raise concerns, that it's a real tough task also to be a teacher in this time. And then again, basically every society, I think, struggles with a very, very diverse student body, with people coming from totally different backgrounds. And of course, this also is reflected in technology available, in space, in pretty much just space in the room available. And that's not so easy, as I said, for someone as privileged as I am with having my own home office and having enough gear here. So that's also something you need to keep in mind. But speaking about mind, Antje, the mindset we faced.
Yeah, with the mindset, what I noticed there, and that goes a little bit back to the first point of the structure, is we've noticed that the mindset of we've always done it that way. Oh my God, we need to change now. This was a really big issue as well. And I think, you know, in the corporate world, you can say, well, we've always done it this way. Why would I have to do it any differently? This question, why should I do it any differently? That question obviously was not there. But one also has to remember that, you know, as human beings, we always hope for the best. So when the schools closed, I noticed there were quite a few teachers that actually said, no, I'm not going to deal with this technology because in a few months this is over anyway. So this was the immediate reality, and then that slowly changed. But this was certainly standing in the way. Another topic that we noticed, or another challenge I noticed in some teachers, is that, well, you know, traditionally teachers are the experts, right? They know, they teach the children, they always have an answer. And now all of a sudden the teachers also moved into this role of not just teaching anymore, but now also having to learn. And that also actually leads me into this last point where, well, maybe the kids actually know more than I do. Now, for teachers that are teaching very young kids, that's certainly not, it's not necessarily a challenge, but for teachers teaching older grades, middle school and high school, the fear just set in where I'm getting asked a question about the technology and I might not be able to answer it. Well, what does that mean? Do I now all of a sudden lose my authority over these children? So this is a challenge also that I think is very, very important to recognize, because this crisis of having to teach from home overnight was really such a huge challenge, I think, emotionally also for a teacher, because now all of a sudden their world was completely turned upside down and also really had an effect on their role and as they knew it for a very long time. But as we said earlier, it was not only about challenges, there were also opportunities, right? I mean, glass half full, glass half empty. And Go ahead, Thomy.
Yep, and from the opportunity side of the house, it's it was very interesting, especially in the beginning when our countries, Austria and Germany, started to react to the pandemic with what is now known as a lockdown. Basically, everyone needs to stay at home, and then you start as a teacher, thinking, okay, how can I deliver content? And what we realized very early on is that it's not the first step you really need to take care of is not really starting with the content. We saw a lot of situations where the first idea was more like, okay, getting back together as a classroom, getting back together as a group, being able as a teacher to see your school kids again. This is in a time, if I remember it correctly, where Teams was only able to show 4 people talking. Something that changed really, really quickly up to 9. And I think we are now on 49 or something like that. And together mode and all those things highlighted at 2 weeks ago at Ignite, or last week at Ignite. So back then, I remember heated discussions with, okay, I want to see everyone. Why can't I see everyone in my classroom? I'm used to it, because if you think of it as a teacher, they are used to stand in front of the classroom and to see everyone. And we all went to school and we all know what pupils do if they are not seen by teachers. So this effect of not paying attention, or the consequence of that the teachers think that people don't pay attention if they don't see them. This was the first reality. And then the second one was like, okay, especially in what was going on in my family, My sister's a teacher. She taught back then kids, they were like 7 or 8 years old. So the first thing they needed to do was get back to be a group again. So talk about what's happened, because it's not only a new situation for the teacher, it's also for the kids something totally different. And you need to talk about, okay, how is everyone at home handling those things? So getting back and connecting and creating this social contact, and then we can talk about teaching. So it was like the what we saw for many schools, the strategy was like, okay, we set up somehow a system of homeschooling, some electronic thing, something over the internet connected, and we talk immediately about how we can teach content and how we can get our plan through. And we realized, no, it's a totally different thing. We need to think about the social construct of a classroom, and we need to get to be together as a group. And I think what we took as a picture for the mind back then is like, no matter what sports you are playing, but there's always an off season, and then you come back to the new season. And the feeling of coming back together as a group, that was kind of some people, or some of my friends described it when they got back together with their pupils, but also teachers with teachers. So also working together as a team of teachers, and then talk about teaching. Okay, going on, in terms of managing the crisis, the next thing is like, okay, what can we do in terms of leveraging this time? What is our only future?
Yeah, and I think once we all got over the shock of, oh my God, our kids are not going to school anymore, and at least that was my shock, they're going to learn less, and now I have them at home on a daily basis. Hoo-hoo, big challenge. We really realized that now is maybe just the time for this digital transformation, because we were really forced into it. And the interesting part is the technology is available. We have it. I mean, it was available before that, but now we really had a reason to try it out. We also realized that Corona certainly has no roadmap, and I don't know where all of you are located, but here in Munich, we went from a complete lockdown to an easing lockdown. Then we were kind of able to travel. Now we have different hotspots popping up in Germany as well as in neighboring countries. So there is no roadmap, and I personally have come to the conclusion, and I hope a lot of schools have come to the same conclusion, that now is the time for the transformation, and we really have to be ready to switch to virtual learning overnight if it's necessary. The other thing that we also realized, that there is really no best practice, right? So you can say now, oh my God, there's no best practice, how do I go about it? But at the same time, it's also an opportunity, because we can really work together in the community and figure out what this best practice can be for the different schools, for the different levels. So our children are our only future. Thomy and I believe strongly that we can build great things now, and I think we have a great comparison on the next slide, how that actually looked like in reality at one point in time.
Yep, it's like the time where you need to have quotes in your slide deck. I don't think that we need to introduce the guys there, but just to give you an idea, you just need to change 2 words on this Microsoft card here. I think this is my access card from being a partner. So there's the mission printed even there. Empower every student and every organization on the planet to learn more. That's basically what you can do, because the general words are achieve more. You just change that to learn. And the other thing, going back to the mindset, the great quote by Henry Ford about cars and horses. It needs to be a little bit different. Teaching needs to change and to adopt digital tools and digital services. And I think we discussed it once in one Facebook group, where not to criticize the idea, but there were people thinking that maybe drones can deliver the paper homework to the kids. So thinking about technology in a very, very innovative way, but delivering then paper. And we were like, okay, you spend so much energy and time and thought about how a drone actually can pick up paper from the school and deliver it, like a big retailer plans to do in the US anyways. But why do you need to do that with homework? You just can put them on a page or put them in Teams. So it's not a lack of innovation and not a lack of change there. It's more like, okay, we need to direct the things in terms of, in our case, what Teams can offer for education. And that's our first steps towards digital transformation. We split them up in different regions. And Antje, please take it away with teacher and students. What are we seeing here?
Sure. So coming out of the SharePoint world, out of the technology world, there are these three little words that I always try to keep in the back of my mind, which is crawl, walk, run. So if we apply this now to Teams for Education, the situation, we really realized at the very beginning when COVID hit and the schools were closed in a lot of places that the social contact had to be reestablished because the kids were just not there anymore. The teachers had no way of reaching them. And of course, teachers wanted to continue their teaching and dive right in, but you have to learn the software. So one way of reestablishing social contact that was done and that we actually recommended to the schools is that the teachers just start with a recurring classroom video conference, right? So not a Teams meeting for 45 minutes of math, but really just a Teams meeting to check in with each other. Now, if we take this further into the school, I mean, the kids usually hang out during the break, right? And this is the really fun time for the kids. It's not necessarily when they sit in the classroom, but now the kids were completely missing that. And I noticed that in my own children that the first 1 or 2 weeks, this was all fun and cool. Ooh, this is interesting. Don't have to go to school.
It's vacation. Yeah.
It's vacation. I can sleep in late, until they realized that they couldn't see their friends either. So this is when reality really set in for my kids. So a virtual schoolyard is also a way of getting the kids back together and have them interact with each other and for them to really continue that connection that they were really missing at that time. But then you could also think about virtual PE classes, physical education, so sports. And why sports PE? Well, a lot of us were stuck at home, right? I mean, including myself. I actually started a workout regimen with a friend of mine where we really checked in on a daily basis if we did our 20 minutes of yoga, because I was sitting all day in my chair here in virtual meetings, and I had a hard time with that. So kids had a hard time with this as well. So another first step, and a more casual first step instead of geography or history, could be just a virtual PE class that a teacher could do by turning their video on and really giving instructions through the video, or maybe even uploading a video they created themselves, or maybe some video from YouTube. So this was really the first way to reestablish the social contact. And then of course it goes into teaching again, right, Thomy?
Yep. And for teaching again, of course, you can send out Word documents or PDF documents that kids need to fill out and hand in back. But we thought about, or not only we, but just think about the billions of users out there of different social media platforms, may it be TikTok, may it be Instagram, Facebook, whatsoever. But I think that all the kids at a certain age, and I'm not talking about 6 or 7 years old, maybe a little bit older, but they are able to record a video. They are able to produce something digital. And why not do things that back when I went to school, we used to go out and just pick up some flowers and then prepare them and bring them back to school to show around, okay, this is this kind of flower, the red one is this, yada, yada, yada. Why not in 2020 make that something multimedia presentation? And I talked with my sister, and she was lucky enough to have what was called here an iPad class for some time. And she was really saying that this was the highlight of when young kids are able to present what they recorded in terms of video, what they recorded in terms of audio, and present that in PowerPoint or whatever software you use. But seeing them deliver talks they need to do normally on pen and paper in a digital format is a really nice way. And we actually thought also about, okay, nature, going out and take pictures of flowers or of animals, that's really easy. But how are you doing that with mathematics, for example? And yeah, it's actually, I think it's pretty easy, because just go to your next town and make a picture of the scenery, and you will see rectangles, you will see triangles, and you will see a lot of structure from geometry there. So only our imagination stops us, and you don't need just a pen and a paper to hand in a homework. And we're not saying that you should get rid of all the traditional ways, just maybe spice it up with some modern approaches and make use of the technology available. Same thing for the relationship between teacher and teacher. I'm on the bottom right now. What we realized over here, that schools are like an independent unit. The school from the neighboring town might only be 5 or 10 kilometers away, but there is not a real regular exchange of ideas or of thoughts between those different schools. So as everyone is online, my colleague is the same distance away than the colleague from the next town, because it's all digital right now, or Antje is now 400 kilometers away, same distance basically. Why not get in touch also with districts and different peoples in that regards? And also, as we already told you, think also about the social contact as the group of teachers, your colleagues. It's the same for everyone. For us, if you stay at home for weeks and months and don't see your colleagues, it does something with us. So we are used to have social interactions on a daily basis normally, and if you're not used to going remote full time, which maybe in the IT some of us are already used to before COVID, but it's something different. And if you look at big tech companies, they do special events every season or every year to come together as a group. There's a reason for that. It's not working only remote. You need to have this social interaction. And don't forget that also teachers with teachers need that too. Your experience about how teachers can interact with parents, did that change over the pandemic, or is it still the same for you?
Well, no, it's I have to say that during the pandemic, when we had the closure, I had very little contact with the teachers. Well, with one teacher I had very little contact, with the other teacher I had a little bit more contact. But I did notice that, of course, as well, that, I mean, the kids might get a login to Microsoft Teams for Education. The parents don't necessarily get it. The parents might not know how to use it properly, so there were a lot of challenges there. And as we said earlier, I mean, I was blessed to have working Wi-Fi at home. A good system set up here with camera and microphone, and not everybody had that either. But the good first step towards that digital transformation would also be to do virtual conferences with the teachers. I have seen some comments in the English Facebook group, Teams for Education, where some teachers had questions around organizing it and how to go about this. So one of the ways to, of course, do this is maybe to offer a time slot reservation through forms, give parents the ability to actually give some input ahead of time what they want to talk about, and then maybe follow up after a conference with a survey again through forms. And then we're also thinking about the recurring consultation hour. This is something that is very common in Germany, that I know my kids' class teacher is available, say, every Wednesday from 12 to 12:30. And usually I have to make an appointment to go see her or talk to her. But of course, this is also something that could be done online. And Microsoft Teams would certainly facilitate that. So overall, I think those are some good first steps for these different groups, teachers with students, again, teachers with students where it comes to learning, teachers and teachers. And that's something where I still want to add on. Creating a team as a teacher's lounge is something that I did in every school that I supported, because it really gave the teacher a safe space, like their own private team, where they could try things out without kids budging in, and where their teachers could really help each other. But I think, as we have it on the next slide, we are in a technology world where we can say, It always depends, right? And we do live in the Microsoft world, so there are many, many different roads that actually lead to Rome, and things can be done in different ways. So I think one of the main takeaways for me was that schools need even more outside help figuring it out than the regular business that I've actually been supporting right now.
Yep, definitely. And it's and somehow it's the same situation as we see when we help companies to achieve more with the digital workplace. You cannot copy a digital workplace from company A to company B. It's always an idea and a concept, and what works great there might not work in a different setup. And same for school. That a little bit contradicts with the idea of, at least in our area, schools being tightly structured by law or by government to have everyone do the same thing. But again, you cannot force same working structure, especially in those online times, across all the different schools. It might be a good start to just narrow it down to a few tools, not so that every school uses different tool. That would be a not so good idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thomy, we have 3 minutes left.
Perfect.
We do like.
Yep. The chances we see, I think this is your 4-step plan.
Yeah.
Your number one. That's something you like to talk about always.
Yeah. So my focus is adoption and change. So first off, get to know your audiences. If you are supporting schools, if you are within a school, take a look at the teachers surrounding you. If you're an admin, take a look at your teachers. Be aware whom you have, what they know, where they need help. And that, of course, extends very much to the students. What are their situations? Where is the most urgent support needed? And then also beyond the students to the parents, because students need the support from their parents. So if you have a clear understanding who your audiences are, it's going to be easier for you to dive into Microsoft Teams for Education.
Yep, same thing for the daily routines. So if you help a school in their Teams implementation, get to know their routines. It's the same thing we do for every internet project, for every modern workplace project, so that you can really be of value added to the routine. And then from an adoption perspective, I think a champions and knowledge community is something you advise everyone to build, just to create a group there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've noticed that in schools that a lot of teachers were actually not that connected with each other. They're not necessarily on LinkedIn. They're not necessarily on Twitter, maybe on Facebook privately. So build a champions and a knowledge community. So if you are within a school, you can support and help each other out, because believe me, it's always easier to solve challenges when you do it in a group than when you try to do it on your own. And you can also build that champions community possibly amongst some of the parents of your kids, because I'm sure that there's some parents that are actually using Teams at their workplace. So I have also advised schools to actually reach out, and it is wonderful if a teacher actually has a parent by their side that can explain further and help the other parents out. And then we have at the last but not least, right, the responsible use of media.
Don't be naive. Cyberbullying is a fact. It exists. It existed already before people used Teams for teaching. The responsible use of digital media, not only for kids. I think that's more a general thing that our societies would be benefit from if we all use digital media in a more responsible way. But especially for kids, again, the big word is cyberbullying. It does exist. Take that as a big challenge also on the way.
Yep.
Okay, then I think we need 1 or 2 minutes, but we rush through our takeaways to finish somewhere on the line. Or let's see.
Yeah.
First thing, it's really okay to dream big, but please start small, step by step, and don't think about the big outcome at the beginning. It helps already if you do the first or second or 3 steps, and then think about the bigger picture. crawl, walk, run, as Antje said. It's also really, really important in terms of education.
Yeah. The second one is give courage to the people around you. That might be your kids, that might be parents in your neighborhood, that might be teachers in your family that you know. Just don't be afraid. We're all in this together, and together we can also really manage that, right?
Yep. And one big thing, get involved. So help teachers. You are a IT person probably, so be of assistance, but also remember, you might not want to hear this, but from the outside perspective, from the normal people, we are the nerds, the IT gurus and the specialists. So be careful with your judgment and your advice. You probably talk to people that are not as educated in terms of IT as you are. So be of assistance, but don't be the know-it-all.
Yeah, and that I think is a really nice bridge to being mindful. Be mindful in the journey that you're taking, because everybody is carrying a package. We don't know nothing about the package other people carry, and I have to say at this point, and I do hope there are some teachers in the session, I have to extend a huge thank you to the teachers, because they were, for me, really one of the essential roles in our society, and I don't think that they have received enough applause and enough thank you. So be mindful. If the teacher cannot do all the things that you expected to do, that you expected the teachers to do, you might not have any idea what they're going through right now. And with that, Thomy, I'm taking the last one as well, because I think this is my signature slide, right?
Absolutely.
Being patient is also an activity. So as we continue to navigate the COVID-19 world in terms of learning and schooling, be patient with yourself, be patient with others, and just take small steps, one step at a time. Thank you very much.
All right. We have a lot of resources that you can look at in the handout and in the slide deck. And with that, thank you very much.